These are the two best YOLO wagons in World of Tanks. Stick around to the end of the video to know exactly why. It should come as no surprise that the YOLO wagons come from the favourite RNG tech tree, of course the Soviet one, and that's because not only do they get armour, but they are insanely heavy and fast that don't just YOLO for damage, but YOLO for rams too. Of course, the first tank that has to be shown is the 268 version 4, all the way up at the pinnacle of tier 10, and you'd think that YOLOing over hills into 3 or more tanks, you would get demolished at this tier. But of course, it's just simply not the case when you have 75 tons of pure metal and a top speed of 55 kilometers an hour with turbo, leading to a whole world of pain for any tank stupid enough to get in its way. Combine that with 650 alpha that can pump opponents on the move as you swoop in, aiming for tracks ideally. You can outtrade most heavies 1 for 1 and will put an IS-7 to shame. Now of course it would be unbalanced if they couldn't pen you, but don't worry, I guess it's unbalanced since the frontal armour of this tank is absolutely cracked and it's super difficult to reliably pen when it's stationary, and even more of a pain when it's moving, and pretty much requires premium rounds to go through the weakest parts. The standard round pen is absolutely bonkers too at 293mm, and what's even more disgusting is the heat rounds you can load by dabbing the 2 key with 360mm of penetration. Definitely a mouse's nightmare, especially when you see how fast this thing can go. Luckily the tank can be grinded within the tech tree, so at least it's not a broken premium or reward tank that only the best players can get. So I expect you to get involved in the YOLO meta, and if you want to get involved in the YOLO of that subscribe button and like button, yeah, I'll guarantee you a full health ram in the next game that you play, or first game that you play in the Object 268 version 4. Now if you thought this tank is awesome as it is, what about if you have platoon mates to go with it? Well, it just becomes 225 tons wall of death that can ram the heaviest tanks in one go and come away with the best ring rates you'll ever see in World of Tanks. Fear not, if you don't have friends though, you can always ping them off in your chat and hope that they also come with you, and just let them know that you're going to be YOLOing in, and yeah, you'll definitely come out with some ridiculous 2-minute games. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I guess it just falls down to the RNG within the game. The YOLO build on this tank uses improved hardening, turbo and rammer, or you can throw the rammer in the bin for a full ram meta using spool liner, or you can opt for the more all-round hardening rammer and coated optics. Definitely one of the best tanks for the YOLO meta, and it's not only continuing as we look at the second vehicle. And that vehicle drops down to the ultimate YOLO fest of tier 8, where you're capable of full healthing all of the tanks that you meet at the tier, considering this beast as preferential a lot of the tier 9s as well, making this thing a ruiner of people's games and an easy way of impacting the game in a short period of time. It is of course the 100-ton Goliath of a KV5, and although it may not survive in game for a long time, it's always there for a good time, and you'll be guaranteed to have a good time. And if you want to amplify this tank into its ultimate form, you can always platoon as well, making it a complete mess of the enemy team as you degrade their brain cells to mush and scare them so hard they literally blow their own mind. There is no stopping on this kind of tank, and it's often way better to ram one opponent and fire at an adjacent opponent. Nothing is safe from this YOLO tank, and of course not even the one driving it, because you don't always end up surviving the entire game, as you can probably expect. But beware, this tank can infect your own gameplay when you're playing in tanks that aren't YOLO and that aren't as powerful as the KV5, so just be careful when you jump back into, say, a Scorpion G, that you aren't just trying to YOLO it. as I've done that a few times after playing this tank, thinking that the exact same is going to work. Of course it just doesn't, but either way, I always run this tank with turbo, hardening and spool liner to get up close and personal, making a beeline for any nearby hill. There is no point in playing the KV-5 as a sniper at the back. The tank is just boring if you do that, and also doesn't particularly have that much armour, even if it can be slightly more difficult to pen the weak points from far away. I mean, people just load instant premium and shoot a stationary KV-5. It's far harder to reliably pen the KV-5 in my opinion when it's on the move ramming into you, since yeah, you just start losing brain cells, as I said. But yeah, ideally that's how I would play this tank, super aggressive, and you know, just admitting the fact that you may get taken out pretty quickly, and that is what the whole YOLO meta is all about and why it is on this list. But of course, respecking your crew as well can add in extra damage that you can deal during the ram if you take controlled impact, and it only adds to the meta, and it's a great way to actually increase your survivability when ramming, so you can actually make those medium tanks on the enemy team's games just slightly worse. And if you're considering getting this tank, it does cost 8,000 bonds, which is a bit expensive, but will give you a ton of fun when you play it like this, and that is ultimately what I'm after when playing World of Tanks. You can, you know, try and get as good as possible in the game, which is in itself very fun when you do get there. But of course, sometimes it's nice to relax and play a tank that doesn't necessarily need the most thought process, just finding a target that doesn't have very much armor and ramming it for full health. Of course, in any other type of gameplay, the tank is pretty weak, like we've said, but you've got to clench and go and hope your team follows you to demolish the enemy team quick enough whilst they focus you. And of course, it can actually lead to some really amazing games that you probably don't ever expect when you play in a ramming tank like this. And yeah, some of the things that I found the most insane is that I was doing just utterly bonkers things in the KV-5 and somehow it was working. I mean, YOLOing through the middle of the map, doing all kinds of things, just going straight over a hill to ram one tank and somehow managing to take out 3 or 4 at the same time. Yeah, I have no idea what the hell was going on when I was playing this tank, but it definitely is a really fun one and I've enjoyed it. And if you do platoon with your friends in this, it's even better. So yeah, I highly recommend you finding some others, even if they're not playing the KV-5, but something heavy or something fast enough but has a little bit of weight to push you forward. Always helps as well. So yeah, really nice, and I highly recommend you try it out at some point in your World of Tanks career. And of course, we are closing in on the 5k sub goal for this year, and if you can help me ram closer to that, or like the video if you haven't done so already, then it comes as a huge help. And I just hope that you have a great rest of the day, and good luck YOLOing. See you in the next one. Goodbye.